You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Cynthia Toolin-Wilson on my show, Author to Author. And tonight I'm here with Kevin Symonds, and we're going to talk about his book, Refractions of Light, 201 Answers on Apparitions, Visions, and the Catholic Church. So, hi, Kevin. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good, good. I'm looking forward to this interview, or I should say for our listening audience, a retake of the interview because the tape of it got erased. So I figure it's all the more important to do it again. So I don't believe in coincidences when things like that disappear, you know. So, so Kevin, would you like to open us with prayer?
Sure. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread,
and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Amen.
Amen.
Our Lady, seat of wisdom,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
So this is a very interesting book, and I remember being absolutely fascinated by it when we had our first interview. So I'll let you tell us what you'd like to tell us about the book.
All righty. Well, you already gave the title, but the nuts and bolts about it is it's talking about the Church's theology of private revelation, but it's done in such a way where it's not as heavily theological. It's more for your average everyday person. It's in Q&A format, so 2-in-1, as the subtitle is 2-in-1 questions and answers. And then in the back there are some accompanying documents that help people to see a little bit further if they want to go like deeper studies or know a little bit more about what the Church teaches. And some of those documents had not seen an English translation prior to the publication of the book. So it was very helpful, but they were foundational documents in the Church's development of her doctrine over the centuries. And so I said, well, I think it's important to get these in English translation. And then subsequently, the Vatican did, in fact, release some of those documents in English translation after I already done it. I was like, oh, man, I paid that money and everything. But it was a good exercise. If nothing else, the work itself that went into it was very good and helpful and constructive for me to learn the material and dive deeper into it.
Indeed. So how long did it take you to write this?
I started writing in March, I think it was around March 18th of 2008, and it was officially published in June of 2015. And the reason for the delay was not because it wasn't already written or anything else, or it just took that long to research. It was just more along the lines of trying to find a publisher for it. The topic of private revelation is a bit, some view it as being a bit archaic or arcane even, I should say. They think it's a very specialized niche kind of study. And in some ways I think that's true, but in other ways I don't, because it affects, this area of the Church's theology affects a lot of people more so than we realize. I mean, just today, for instance, I got a phone call from somebody out of the blue saying, hey, Kevin, is such and such a real thing? You know, people really look forward to learning about this stuff, and they want to know more about it. And so I should probably begin by explaining a little bit more about what private revelation is. That's the formal term to describe the Church's theology in this area. But what it is about like apparitions, visions, locutions, various phenomena that are related to to things like along the lines of like prophecy sometimes, or foreseeing the future, revealing the will of God first and foremost, revealing the will of God to people that may not necessarily be able to see that maybe as clearly. And sometimes it's a completely supernatural thing. Like you couldn't know certain things unless you hadn't received this grace from God. And it's a very popular topic now because we live in very tumultuous times, to say the least. Yes. And the purpose of prophecy is not only to reveal the will of God, but also to give people hope. And a lot of people are living hopeless right now. They're living hopelessly. They don't know which way to go and to turn to. So when they find out about the latest mystic, person having a vision or apparition, all of a sudden, boom, they are off on the wings of the wind, and they're paying thousands of dollars to go somewhere and to go see this alleged phenomenon happen live and in person. And because of there's been so many of these, I said, all right, people, let's not lose our heads. But in order to help us not lose our heads, we needed something that people can look back to and say, all right, well, what are my moral responsibilities when I'm hearing, through the grapevine that, Jane Doe down the road is receiving visions and stuff. What is my responsibility as a Catholic? First to God, and of course to the church and to myself. But that was the purpose of this book, was to provide those practical, the practical, but also the doctrinal, because the practice of the Catholic faith is always based upon the doctrine. And so it was important for people to know what the doctrine was, and then to know how to practically live it. So, for instance, that is a very notable question that people do ask, and I get it often enough, and it's a serious question, where it's like, well, what do I hear? What do I do when I hear about Jane Doe, across the state, hearing about having alleged visions and whatnot? Can I go? And there's no one real set of criteria that you can go by, but there are some questions you should be able to ask yourself. So, is it important for me to go? Is it necessary for me to go? Is there, why do I want to go? There's some kind of like a gut check that people have to do sometimes. Some people might want to go just to see signs and wonders. There, what some people call curiosity seeking. It's an older term, but I think it works very well. So, do you want to see this just to satisfy your curiosity? Is it a lack of faith that's causing you to go? There's all different kinds of things, but the moral rule is we cannot expose ourselves to anything that could be contrary to faith and good morals. And if we do, that's a sin. And private revelation, alleged revelations, fit very, very well into that category. And one of the responses I often get is, "What about people that went to go see? What about people that went to go see? What happened to Fatima with the miracle of the sun? I'm like, well, that's a little bit different. That's somebody's claiming that something's going to happen on this date at this time. We're not inviting you to come, but we're telling you what the Virgin Mary said, what the vision said.
Right.
So people could go to verify it. I would think that would be a fair thing to do, because if you go and if it doesn't happen, then what the origin of this is. But if it does happen, well, then you've got something on your hands here. So I think that we can make an argument on that level that there was something very, very specific. They were told something was going to happen, and people would witness it. Okay, but that doesn't happen always.
Right.
I remember 5, 6 years ago, maybe 7, I was hearing about somebody here in the United States, and this person was picking up steam, I noticed. So I went to this person's website, read what was being said, and I concluded privately, just for myself, that, okay, this is a dear person, they've got some nice, somewhat astute things to say, but as far as the alleged revelations go, I don't really think that this is, and I didn't publicize my information, I just simply, if anybody asked me privately, I said, yeah, I looked into it, and I really can't say that I think it's of, supernatural origin. But then that changed about within a year and a half after this initial thing happened, when somebody solicited my opinion for publication, and so I did. I went around, I researched this person's website and did much more in-depth sort of materials, and only then did I say anything in public, because I was invited to do so.
Right.
And that set off a war that set off a war. I'll just leave it at that. Every so often this person throws hit and digs my way. I won't say who it was, but they throw hit and digs my way, very indirectly. But it's like, yeah, I know what's going on. So something like that. All right. So the purpose of what I'm telling the story is that it's meant to kind of highlight the point in story form, which is, if you hear about something, it is permissible, especially nowadays with access to the internet and people can look things up that way, to do a little research on your own. You say, okay, I did hear about Jane Doe across the state, making these claims. So is there anything that I can learn for myself? Just to be informed. And as you're looking at it, you're reading it, you can make a decision and then, a personal conclusion. It's nothing authoritative. That's the church's job. But it makes it a little bit more, I don't want to say easier, but it makes it helps our own discernment. Excuse me. Because we can look at it for ourselves, not impose it upon anybody else. But if you can be in a conversation with somebody, of course. Hey, did you hear about Betty across the state? Casual conversation. But as far as traveling out there and everything, that's when I personally have to start drawing a line. And I have a very unique analogy for that. Maybe we can get into that a little bit later. But there's a very unique analogy that I like to give for that. Yeah. Unless you want to go into it now, I can do that for you if you'd like.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Okay. Well, sometimes people, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, kind of back it up to how, because it can be, you kind of have to, it's several steps involved, but people have asked over the years, do I dare say the word? There's one case in particular that this really applies to. I don't know if you want me to mention specific names, but I can do that. I don't know what your rules are for your program.
Probably not actually give someone's name, but you can certainly tell the story.
Okay. Well, it's not a person.
Okay.
It's a place.
Okay.
It's kind of controversial, and I don't know what the rule is, so I just want to make sure I respect your program. So is it permissible to mention the name, or probably should just refrain?
Probably just call it a place, because I don't know what the legalities of something like that are. Okay.
Well, all right. So I'll be more general. So some people have asked, well, at this place, Kevin, people are going to confession, they're going to mass, and they are converting, et cetera, et cetera. How could the devil be behind all of that?
Oh, very easily.
Oh, yes, very easily. And I'd love to hear why you say that. And kind of like swap stories, if you will, swap ideas here. But it's like people don't realize how the devil is very sneaky. I love the way Della Reese put it. There's an episode, I think it was the Halloween episode of the year 2000, of A Touch by an Angel. She gave a really, really good explanation, and I saw it on TV once. I nearly jumped out of my chair. I was like, that's it. She said, baby, the devil is a magician. He'll keep your attention over there, so you don't see what's going on over here.
Right.
And I said, oh, my goodness, thank you, Della Reese. May she rest in peace.
Yes.
But now, that's a thought. Now let me put some concrete, some more meat and potatoes on here.
Mm-hmm.
So why would it be bad? Well, how could the devil be behind all of that? And so I look at the person and I say, okay, when I went to a certain place of alleged private revelations many years ago, I went with a group of 35, 40 people, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it cost us no less than $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
That was way back several years ago.
Wow.
I said, now, if you do the math, $35,000, 35 people times 1,500, that's a considerable chunk of change.
Yes. That's
no less than $40,000.
Right.
And so I say, okay, so we get this amount. We'll say about $40,000, rough estimate.
Mm-hmm.
I say to people, all right, put that thought on the back burner. I look at them and I say, do you believe that we have a vocations crisis? Oh, yes, we do. I said, okay, what do you think is the number one reason for this crisis? Sometimes the number one answer that I usually get is something along the lines of like Michael Rose, Goodbye, Good Men. That kind of an answer, bad people keeping good people out, good men and women out of the seminaries or convents,
Mm-hmm.
And I say, okay, I said that is a topic for discussion. That is something that people have talked about. I said, but that's actually not the number one vocation killer. And they're like, what? And I said, no, it's not. I said the number one vocation killer is debt. And they're like, huh? I said, yeah, it's debt. I said, Thomas Aquinas himself, in the Summa Theologia, wrote about this. You can't enter, you can't become a monk or a nun if you have debt.
Right.
It's such a serious problem that he wrote it in the Summa. I mean, like one of the classic pieces of Western theology. So people are like, whoa. I said, yeah, it's online at newadvent.org. You can look it up online.
Right.
I don't remember the book or the chapter and article in question and all that, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, so now let's kind of let's start putting this all together. I say, if you have a guy or a girl, they go through a 4-year college, what do you think their average debt is?
Mm.
I say anywhere between $40,000 and $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the end of those 4 years, one of them, somebody says, I think God's calling me to be a priest. And they approach a vocations director for a diocese or a religious community. And what do you think is one of the first questions they're going to ask you?
Do you have any debt?
Do you have any debt? And I go, and they go, and you can start seeing things clicking now. And I'm like, yep. And you know where this is going because now the person has to say, yes, I have $50,000. Oh, well, you need to pay that off before we can, entertain you coming into the novitiate or accept you for seminary, Well, now that gets delayed because you have to work to pay off those debts.
Yep.
So I said, now here comes the tie-in. I said, what was that amount of money that you spent, all that group spent, going off to this place of alleged private revelations not approved by Holy Mother Church? $45,000, and what was the figure? And things are like, oh my God! I've had one or two people say to me like, I never thought about it that way before. I'm like, exactly. The devil is a magician who keeps
very clever
over there.
Very clever.
So you don't see what's going on over here, and they're like, whoa. Never thought about it that way. Now I'm not saying that's the only reason. The devil can do some pretty funky stuff that has different effects, but I'm just simply pointing out this one possibility. And there are organizations that help people, like the Mater Ecclesiae Fund for Vocations or the Labouré Society. They help vocations. The money that somebody would spend going to an alleged place of private revelation, they could donate to one of these organizations and get a priest or a monk or a nun. that's praying for you for the rest of your life. That has infinitely more value.
Yes.
Especially in death. You know, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm going to need all the prayers I can get, because if I go to Purgatory, I'm going to be there for a very long time. You know, I'll be happy that I'll at least go into heaven, but it's like, Purgatory is not the goal. You know, I want to go to heaven, you know.
Yes. Well, if you get to Purgatory, you will, eventually.
Yeah, and I hear people say, well, if I should just make it to Purgatory, I'm like, no, you're missing the point. You're supposed to go to heaven. You don't want to go to Purgatory, you know.
Right.
So I just say to people, kind of tied back in, is that, you know, it's the devil's the magician. Keep you over there so you don't see what's going on over here. And if we don't think, what we say, ecclesially, in terms of the church and her good and serving God, we're going to miss out on an awful lot. Yes. And right now, there are many needs of the church that people are not responding to, because they're, you know, doing whatever. And sometimes it's for valid reasons, like, you know, someone may lose a job or something. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when people are, you know, wasting their money, and they may not even know that they're wasting their money. You know, so it's a controversial, very very heavy-weighted issue, very controversial to be sure, and it's loaded with a lot of emotions. But we have to think about these things as Catholics, because this is what the sensus fidei, the sense of the faith, tells us that we need to be doing. Yeah. So I'd love to know, like, what was your thought on that when you said the devil could? You indicated that you kind of knew that too, that the devil could still be running around doing stuff.
Oh, sure. Well, there's no question of that. I mean, if you believe in God and you know that He's all good, and then you see a tremendous amount of evil and ignorance and misunderstandings, you know, that occur on a daily basis, even among people of goodwill. I mean, there's only one explanation for that. And I, you know, as a theologian, to me, the first few books of Genesis tell us so much. You know, and when you hear about, you know, the temptation, you know, with the resulting original sin, I mean, they were tempted with something that was good. It's like, it's good to have knowledge. You'll know as much as God. Well, that, of course, is not good, but the idea of knowledge, of having knowledge, of knowing, is a good thing. I mean, that's why we go to school. That's why we study the Bible. No matter what we do, because we have that natural curiosity. You know, we are intellectual creatures, spiritual creatures with intellect and will. So, of course, we want to know. And what was the very first thing he did? He said, "You want to know more?" You know, and so it was a good that they thought they were getting. So the devil, I don't think has really changed his mode of operation very much. You know, he always offers you something that you see as good, even though under certain circumstances it is good. But under the circumstances in which he offers it, it is not. So
that's kind of what Aristotle says, right? Right at the beginning, open line of the Metaphysica. All human beings by nature desire to know.
Yes, absolutely, right, absolutely, because that's how God created us, with intellect and will. You know, so as spiritual beings, intellect and will, we want to know. We want to know. And normally that's good. Of course, sometimes we get to know things and we abuse them, and that's obviously bad. In this case, though, at the beginning of creation there, or at the beginning of man on earth, it changed everything for everybody permanently. I mean, that also, I think, is important for us to recognize, because you're not talking about a slouch. The devil is powerful and not to be fooled with, you know, and so many people today fall into that trap. They want power and they go that way. But in the end, they always lose.
They do, yes. And, it's created as angelic beings with a superior intellect, that's what makes the devil very powerful, is that he could outsmart, even the smartest human being. There's only one time that I know of, off the top of my head at least, I should say, let me qualify my words there, where I read about somebody actually outsmarting a demon, a human being outsmarting a demon. And it was J. Godfrey Ropert. He was a former Anglican, became Catholic, and then did a lot of work in the late 19th, early 20th centuries to expose the dangers of the spiritualist or spiritism movement, table wrappings and all that kind of stuff. He did. Oh my goodness, that guy is just a rare gem, rare gem. I believe he was born in Germany, but he spent a good chunk of his life, a good portion of his life in England. So he was bilingual, and he had a sharp mind, very, very sharp mind. When he was engaging, I don't remember if it was a poltergeist or something, but he was engaging one of these spirits that was manifesting itself in audible terms, or in an audible manner, and Ropert actually tripped up the demon, caught him in a lie. And the ensuing scene was absolute pandemonium. I mean, the demon didn't take too kindly to being one-upped by this lowly human being. Ropert himself, his son, he had a son, and he became a Dominican priest in England, I believe. But yeah, it was. I sat there, I read the book, and I was like, oh my goodness, this guy! Like, did you actually pull that off? But he did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wouldn't sit there and I wouldn't try. I'd be like, nope. I'm not going there. Not going there.
Yep.
I've seen enough of the demonic in my life. I don't need. I don't need to be talking to. No. Not that I'm saying like I'm not. I'm just saying that I've had some really funky things happen to me over the years that are just unexplainable outside of that kind of a context. So then, kind of go back to the original thing. Is that I mean it can be people just they need to know their catechism. They need to understand and to need to know how these things operate. So another thing that I hear people say and that I address in Refractions is a somewhat controversial question of vocations and private revelations, alleged private revelations. A lot of people have believed, and I've heard, I'm a convert, I became Catholic in 1997, and I had always heard that vocations coming out of an alleged private revelation, that is actually a good thing. Like it's a positive fruit. And when I researched it, I said, actually, that's kind of questionable, because even Aquinas, in his book Contra Retrahentes, I think it was chapter 10. I don't remember. It's in Refractions, but he flat out states that the devil can suggest someone to enter the religious life. Sure. And he says the attraction, attrahentur ad Deo, it can come from, that was in Latin, it can come from God, but the suggestion could be, the devil could tell it. And people may go, well, why would the devil do that, Kevin? That makes no sense. I said, well, I want to get, this is where I can combine practical as well as theoretical knowledge. And I look at the person, I say, I have spent time in discernment, both as a diocesan seminarian as well as in a religious community. And I can tell you right now, Aquinas was right. And anybody who is well seasoned in either diocesan priesthood or the religious life, any one of them will tell you that what Aquinas said is true, because there are some very sordid characters that get in there and they cause havoc. Yep. They don't have authentic vocations. I was just on the phone today with a priest friend of mine who was telling me about what's going on with a member of his presbyterate. And you just sit there and you're just face palming it the whole time. You're like, how did this happen? How did this not show up in psychological exams? Did not anybody notice this in seminary? How did these people slip through the cracks? Meanwhile, other guys that are good are the ones who get marginalized and either leave of their own volition or are forced out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand this. It's a secret judgment of the Almighty God, and it's not meant for me to know.
Yeah.
But the point is, there are some people who do get through, who do not have vocations, and they are not properly vetted, and so they enter in and they wreak all kinds of havoc, either in a parish, the larger diocese, or if speaking in terms of diocesan priesthood, or in a religious community. They can do a lot of damage, a lot of damage in the religious community, and it's all meant to be disruptive, and that causes the devil to throw his hands up in joy and glee, so to speak. But it does happen, and so I've had to reject. Pardon? I
think it happens quite a bit.
Oh yes, especially in this day and age. You know, I'm going to be a bit bold. Our Lady appeared to a Spanish nun in Quito, Ecuador. Her name was Madre Mariana de Jesus Torres Iberia Choa, and it was popularly known as the Keto Apparitions. I do believe in the Keto Apparitions. I do. I've read them. I own the Spanish texts. Our Lady made a number of astounding prophecies about the 19th and 20th centuries. And when you read what she said, and I only wish I had the books on hand to give you a quote or two, but when you read what Our Lady said, it is absolutely mind-boggling how direct and clear the prophecies are. And now, 21 years into, well, really 20, you're close to 21, 20 years into the 21st century, we have some years behind us now. We can look back and say, oh my goodness, this fits to a T. You know, and one of the things that Our Lady had said, and I'm paraphrasing here because, again, I don't have the text in front of me, but she talked about how the state of the clergy was going to be really, really in a funk. And just how there would be people who did not have authentic vocations. It's astounding. I encourage people to read it because it really is a. We don't want to lose our sense of balance. I don't want to tell people go read this and just go headlong into it and and go all crazy with. No, always with balance. Always with a balance. Our Lady doesn't give us these things to be sensational. She gives them to us to give us hope, as well as to warn us. And those are two beautiful things. I got a phone call today from somebody asking me about keto and talking to me about it. And it was because this person was like, wow, I had no idea. And this person got hope, got hope from that. And that's what it's designed to do. So these are the kinds of questions, these big questions. There are also minor ones as well that are also taken up within the two covers of front and back of Refractions of Light. But so how does the Church go about discerning these things? What does she look for? Does she have criteria that she looks at? Well, the answer is yes. The Church does have criteria. They were outlined in the document that was published privately to the world to the world's bishops in 1978. But then the Holy See decided to publish the document for the Church at large in, I think it was May, somewhere between May 22nd and May 24th of 2012, so about 9 years ago. And I remember that. I remember when that happened. It was like, wait, they're releasing the document after all this time? And I was writing Refractions, actually, and I had a copy of that text. The document is called Norme Sacrae Congregationis, Norms of the Sacred Congregation. And they were published, but nobody knew about it, or nobody had access to it because it was done privately for all those years. But then once it became public, I was like, oh, well, there you go. And this was one of the documents that I had worked on to have an English translation, and it was going to put into the book. But then it came out 3 years before the book got published, and I was like, dang it. So the norms go over some of the things that the church looks at, but the norms are not exhaustive. They don't sit there and go, okay, we have 21 things we need to look. No, it doesn't. So, for instance, miracles. I don't even think the word miracle is even in the document, if I remember correctly. I've seen both the Latin and the English, and I don't remember the word miracle being in there at all. So, not off the top of my head anyway. So, what about miracles? Aren't miracles a criterion? No, actually, in the Vatican document, miracles aren't in there. But they are a criterion.
Yep.
If you have unexplainable healings, that's a positive side. But they're not mentioned in there. So the Vatican divides it into two categories, negative and positive, or positive and negative criteria. So some of the positive criteria are things like, is there a healthy devotion? Or are people running headlong into ruin? One of the negative criteria is there a psychological imbalance in the person claiming these things? Are they looking to get money or fame or some kind of remuneration? Or are they using these alleged revelations to help other people? So, for instance, several years ago, there was somebody here in the United States who was claiming to have revelations, and they were making very serious claims about what was going to happen in the future. And there's a trend out there among prophecy that God is telling people that there are going to be these safe places called refuges.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard of this, but it's a thing. This has been going on for years and years, since the 90s at least. And it's been ramping up even more so in recent years. Well, this person in the United States was talking about these refuges. And people, I won't say where in the country, but there was some people in the country that had a lot of land, and they contacted this alleged visionary and told this person that, hey, we've got some land for sale that could be used for refuges. Well, this person, this alleged visionary, made it public that these people were parceling off their land for these to be used as refuges for people. Now, the alleged visionary claimed that not a dime was being made for this person, for the alleged visionary.
Right.
But other people, this person was using his platform. I'll say his, because his default. I won't confirm if it was a male or a female, but I'm just using he. I'll use the masculine pronoun for default purposes. Let me be clear. Still standard English as far as I know. So this person went on the internet, said, "Hey, I received this message from these people. They're looking to help you out. I don't make a dime off of this, but here, if you're looking for them, write me a message and I'll put you in touch with them." So now you have this platform. You have this platform of God said, God told me, and you are now using that platform to sell land, to barter, property sale.
Yep.
That's a bad sign. Very, very bad sign. It's like, okay, that's not good. That's not good at all. And this is kind of in the forefront because this person recently took a shot, because I called out this person publicly for that, and this person took a pot shot at me within the past couple of months. So I'm not trying to be like revengeful or vindictive of it. It's not that. It's just saying that when I said earlier, this stuff still goes on. This is what you're dealing with. And of course, when you have...
You always have naive people. Yeah,
and this in and of itself, insofar as we're talking about what the church, how the church discerns these things, this is what we're talking about, and so I'm tying this all in because this is the reality of it. So with the church, if the church decides to look at this person's case, this is the kind of thing that they would look at. They would say, well, wait a minute, several years ago you did do this in violation of the church's norms. And then on top of it, after you got called out for it, you're then going around in the public forum smacking these people around. Even if you don't mention them by name, you're going around and you're going, they're just jerks, or however the person said it. You know, the church would look at that and go, dude, that's not a good sign. Like, that just shows you being small, petty-minded, vindictive. You know, if you're seeing the Mother of God, don't you think your thoughts should be a little bit more elevated? You know, drawing you closer to the heart of God, you know, and in holiness. Cardinal Ratzinger himself he said that if he's like, the major criterion to discern an alleged private revelation is whether it draws you closer to Christ, to the three theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. And if you've got a visionary or visionaries running around throwing little, you know, vindictive darts at people like that, that's not a good sign at all. Not a good sign.
Yeah. See, from my perspective, part of the problem here is that's what you're talking about is one of the problems. But by putting the norms out there for anybody to read, they could see what they would have to do. You know, an evil person could look at this and say, this is what I have to pretend to be. You know, and could worm their way into religious life or into diocesan life, and then wreak havoc. So I agree with what you're saying about how they check people out and do catch some, obviously. But how many have found out how to be accepted without having a vocation and have not been caught because they know how to act? You know, so that's always been a concern for me. Because people can act holy. You know, they can say the right thing. You know, I don't know how anyone could do that all the time. I mean, you know, it's like being on stage all the time. But I'm sure it happens. And to me, and I have no proof of this. This is just my gut reaction. It's, you know, when you hear about priests that have done something wrong, they're the ones that manage to pull it off. But that's just my take on the situation.
Yeah, and a lot of people are trying to make sense of this. I just recently published an essay about Bella Dodd, the famous communist lawyer who reverted to the Catholicism of her youth in the early 1950s. And people kind of look to her, because there's a claim that she put 1,300 men into the seminaries, and people go, oh, well, that must be the reason why we have these problems now, is because of all that. And, you know, I don't want to burst people's bubbles or bruise the reed, but when the historical evidence just doesn't support it.
Right.
She may have had influence over 1,200 or so men, and suggested that they go into the religious priesthood or religious life. I don't question that she might have done that, but nobody has ever proven that all 1,200 of them have ever gotten through. That's just not possible. The rigors of seminary formation, people get booted, they drop out, some people convert. You know, we just don't know. There's not enough intel on that. However, it's actually not all that hard to game the system.
Yes, exactly.
There are some guys, I won't say how, because I don't want to encourage anybody, but there is a way to game the system. There is a fatal flaw now. And I have spent time in seminary formation. I've seen this up close and personal. But there is a way to do it, and there are people who have figured out how to do it. And I don't know if they do it deliberately or maliciously, but some people figure it out, and they act accordingly, and that's one of the ways that they slip through. Mm-hmm. I've seen this, but I know I'm vague, I know I'm cryptic, but I cannot say it out loud without kind of like what you were saying earlier. You read it and then you can game the system.
Yes.
I don't want to be the stepping stone for people who don't know it to all of a sudden know it and be able to do it. Mm-hmm. But it suffices to say that I'm not that way. I can't do that. I don't like manipulating. I don't like that. That's just not my cup of tea. I'm originally from New England. We're very direct. We don't like you. We just tell you.
Oh, yeah. You want to hear it, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, and I have no problem. I can be pastoral. I can have bedside manners. I can be tactful. Don't get me wrong. But those have been more of acquired skills for me over the years.
Yeah.
Because it's not being from New England. That's not a bad thing. And I prefer to be very direct because it's very honest. It's like, no, I just want to know what I think. Here it is. So I don't mean to. Again, I apologize. I don't mean to be cryptic or anything, but it's just there is a good reason why I withhold it. So it's people can figure these things out. And
now see that I figured that out myself a long time ago. And I look at that, and it's like, to me, to game the system so that you can get into a seminary to get the training to theoretically actually get ordained and be a priest. I mean, if you're gaming the seminary system, I mean, do you even believe in God? I mean, really, that's the kind of thing that goes through my mind. And if you do,
some people don't.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, how could you possibly believe in God?
I can actually confirm it, that's what happens. Some of these people, the older generation more so, not so much the younger guys, because when I was in seminary, some of those guys were just like, I was like double some of these guys' ages. Like, the youngest was 17 when I was there. And here I am, I was 38 at the time. I was like, I'm old enough to be your father, child. Or if you've seen the movie, the recent adaptation of Lion, the Witch of the Wardrobe, it's like, don't cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written. It's like, I hear these guys talking about all these, like, I hear some of these guys talk about some of these issues, and I was just like, don't talk to me about that witch. I was there when it happened. It's just so funny, but it's all in jest, of course. We would laugh and get a joke out of it, But especially some of the older generations, the only way I can tell you this story is I can tell you direct. I was talking to a friend in Ireland, and he was telling me a story once about how he was talking to an abbot of a religious community, and this person, the abbot, actually said to him, "I don't believe this stuff." And I'm like, and my friend said to him, "Well, then why in the bleep? Why in the heck are you here? And what are you doing?" And I don't remember what the answer was, but of course I then said to my friend, I was like, "These people, they don't believe." They don't take the faith seriously, and this is why people are starving. They're not getting the faith.
Right.
And it's a scandal. It's an absolute scandal. It's just so sad. Some people think only for their preservations. I live in North Dakota presently, and right now they're looking to pass I don't remember if it's in the legislature or in the Senate, but they're looking to pass a bill that will require clergy to be mandated reporters, but within the context of confession. So if a pedophile or if a rapist confesses something like that in confession, if the priest does not say anything about it to the state, and the state finds out about it, that priest can be brought away in handcuffs.
And
it's
scary.
just sad, but that's the state. It is, and that's the state of affairs that we're in right now. And so the priests are like, what are we going to do? And I'll tell you right now, there are a lot of priests who are willing to go to jail. Yeah. And I thank God for that.
Yeah. So an interesting aside, though, is if someone's in confession, behind the screen, how does the priest even know who it is?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, this
I've
is
had
awful. Just awful.
It is, and I suspect what's going to happen is priests are going to, if something like this passes, I think priests are going to have to be inventive, Thankfully, here in my area, we don't offer face-to-face because of COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been an unexpected blessing, shall we say? COVID, a blessing? What? COVID has been an unexpected blessing, but I think that the screen then, and I won't go into the specifics, but there are other things I think the priests are going to have to start doing in order to, if something like this passes, to ensure that they can't comply simply because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they don't want to, but it's like, no, they can't. I don't know who it was. I didn't get a name.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't on it, let's say.
Yeah.
I
don't like
faces behind the screen.
Yeah. I've never liked the face-to-face because it makes me too aware of the person I'm talking to, and that's not what I want to be doing. It's like obviously you're confessing to the priest, but it's like if I see the priest, then I'm not going to be concentrating as much on God. It's like a distraction to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the beautiful imagery of confession.
Yeah.
The Vatican has talked about this recently, is that, you're confessing to the priest, but, insofar as he stands in persona Christi Capiti.
Yeah.
Was it Capitis? You can, through the screen, it's a little bit easier to kind of do that. So there is that.
Yes.
I do both.
Mm-hmm.
I do both. I'm more I can do either one. If somebody put a gun to my head and said choose, I'd say behind the screen, but that's just
me too.
I don't receive communion in the hand, even before COVID. Never did. Mm-hmm. Well, hardly ever did. Very few times, and usually it was an accident. Like they mistook my hands out for something. But that's just how I was raised. Again, I'm a convert, and that's just how it happened with me. It wasn't like a doctrinal issue. Nobody sat there and said to me, Kevin, there are people duking this out. You got to pick a side, man. It wasn't anything like that. It was just, no, I became Catholic, and this is what my relatives did, and this is how I was taught, so that's what I did. Mm-hmm. Simple, tells the story. Again, Boston was simple, tells the story. Same thing with my interest with the classical languages of Greek and Latin. I studied those in college, and I started getting into it in high school, and that's because not because, again, it was like this traditionalist versus liberal sort of a thing. No, it was, or, extraordinary form versus the Novus Ordo. No, it really wasn't any of that. It was just, I got involved in internet apologetics, and I realized very quickly I needed to know what the fathers of the church and the scriptures said, and the way to do that was to get to the languages.
Yeah.
That's what started it for me. It wasn't these debates on, traditional or liberal.
Yeah.
It wasn't any of that. It was just, it was very practical. I needed to be able to answer people. And then subsequently I found out that canon law, I think it was canon 249, that says that clerics have to be bene caliant, well hardened in the Latin language, precisely in order to be in touch with the sources of Christian thought. That's Vatican II right there.
Yeah.
So all of this background was of tremendous help when I was researching for the Refractions of Light book, because I was then in touch with those sources of Christian thought. I could look up the document, and I'm not like conversationally fluent, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to pretend to be a master of Greek and Latin, but it did open up many doors, and I remain intensely grateful for that. Just the other day I was at the gym, and I was talking to this gentleman, and we just talked about whatever, and the conversation turned to faith and going to church and stuff, and languages that came up, and I said, I was like, with that language background, it has been a boon to my theological work. I wouldn't have been able to do half the stuff that I've been able to do if I didn't have that. And that's what the church desires. It's right there in Vatican II, codified in the 1983 Code of Canon Law. And it's all very, very helpful. You can research things, and it expands your brain, and you begin to see we truly do stand on the shoulders of giants. And at the end, when we look at what the Word of God is, ultimately, of course, Jesus Christ himself, but I mean, in the sense, I mean the Word as in, revelation.
Right, yeah.
It is infinitely more attractive. There's such a depth there. I heard of one biblical scholar who spent his entire career on one Greek word. That's it.
Oh, boy.
Because it was so compact. And there's just such beauty there. And it's like, folks, it's like, in a way, John of the Cross was right. You're kind of insulting God when you sit there and say, well, everything Jesus went through for us, that's not enough. We want more. Well, that's kind of insulting, and it's displeasing to the divine majesty. So, and John of the Cross talks about this, and I quote him towards the latter part of the book there, towards the end of the questions there on these very matters. Mm-hmm. But there's such a beautiful, beautiful mystery and such a depth there. And it's like, folks, there's just so much, You could spend a whole lifetime on this, So let's not lose our focus. Let's stay on course. And that's what my book is really ultimately all about, is to help people stay on course. And hopefully leading them closer to, the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Wow. Well, I think you're doing it.
I'm trying. Sometimes it feels like it's an uphill battle, but I'm trying. And I sit here, I do my work, have my website, write my stuff, print, publish it. Usually it goes through people first. I don't just usually hit the publish button before trusted people look at it. And like in the case of Refractions, it was granted the imprimatur, so it's officially recognized by the Church as being free from doctrinal error. So that was good.
Yeah. Well, it gives people a lot to think about. I think our listeners will enjoy reading it and really thinking about the things that you're talking, especially those that take this seriously. But I mean, consider. I mean, we have you and we have me, a theologian, saying basically the same thing. Which is people do. I mean, you use the expression "game the system." It's true. We have to be aware of that. Just because someone acts holy and may in fact think they are, doesn't mean they can't mislead you because they're misled. So there's an awful lot that people need to be conscious of. So.
That's a good point. About themselves being misled. Some of it's really, really innocent. And some couple of one or two well-placed questions can help somebody figure that out pretty quickly. Like if I'm talking to somebody, it's usually apparent fairly quickly to me. If somebody is, I think the Italian word is innocenti, just an innocent one. One of the innocent ones. And then I kind of interact with the person accordingly. If I sense that there's something a bit more substantial there and closer to, let's just say a lot of questions there, then I kind of the line of questioning will change, and I will, I won't necessarily get combative, but I would have to start asking some very tough questions. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head of an example, but. Oh yes, one person I actually talked on the phone. Alleged visionary, I actually talked on the phone, and this person had said some stuff publicly that was like, "Have you lost your mind?" Making blatantly false claims and insinuations and and stuff like that. And we actually get the person on the phone, and I said to them, "If do you really think that by saying what you said on one point is going to help your case? Like, you are sorely mistaken, And at one point, this person had made a statement about me publicly, and I was talking to the person in the same conversation, and I pointed out to this person, I said, I was supposed to meet this person, and it never happened, and this person never knew the reason why, and instead of approaching me and asking me, what happened. This person took to the internet and made some statements about this. So now when I had the person on the phone, I said to the person, I said, I have a question for you. What's that? I said, what if, I framed it as a what if. I said, what if I told you that I was told by my spiritual director to cut off communication with you? What if I told you that? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, this person realized, because there was a very pregnant pause and dead silence on that phone, as reality caught up to this person, and they realized, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought of that exigency there. You know, that thought didn't even cross my mind. Mm-hmm. And it's like, now I'm supposed to obey. I said, I never confirmed if that was the case or not. I just simply said, what if?
Yeah.
And I left it that way deliberately because I wanted this person to think. Mm-hmm. They hadn't foreseen that possibility, and they realized, oops. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah. I said, so that's what I'm saying. Like the line of questioning can change depending upon the person, how the person is engaging and interacting, and behaving. Really. And in this one case, I didn't want to be so forthright and combative, but I was like, well, I kind of had to in that case because this person, put me aside, this person was saying blatant things that were just not true about a priest.
Oh, dear.
I'll clarify. About a priest. Blatantly untrue. But because this alleged visionary turns out had an axe to grind with this priest, you see?
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's all I need. I mean, you just shot your case. You're done. So these are, again, all things that we look for, and so many people will follow. The Latin term is the ascecle, the followers, the devotees. But they can be really deceived.
Yes.
And tell others about what's going on, but from their deceived point of view. So it's the blind leading the blind.
Exactly.
And it's so sad. It's like I just, my heart breaks. Yeah. Some people believe I'm like this. I've been called a lot of. I've even been called the spawn of Satan before, for doing the stuff that I do. I even got an email from a man who purports to be a bishop, warning me out of the clear blue. Never spoken to the man before. He wrote me last September of 2020, basically warning me that I was prideful, whatever else, and I'm like, you don't even know me, and you won't even tell me your name.
Right.
I don't even know for sure, really, if you're a bishop. In the sense of it's like, why should I take you seriously? I mean, I have plenty of advisors and people that I go to, and they don't talk to me about this. Clergy even that I go to. Yeah. So it's like I really do try to be very charitable when I write. It's stern and it's very direct, but that's the Boston in me. But it's not written out of charity. I try to be modest and chaste even in my language, in the word choice, to help people to save face. Sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes I am a bit more, okay, you called down the thunder, and now you're going to get struck, I admit it. I'm not going to play the saint. And I don't like. I'm a very laid back individual. I don't like, I don't like conflict. Right. I don't want to engage in it. But truth be told, if people are going to deceive, willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, that's a whole separate matter. It's like, well, no, I've got to warn people. I'm going to give them a heads up.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
of course, always in charity, always in charity, always.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to play the saint. I have failed any number of times.
I think charity is something that a lot of people don't have any sense of what it really is. So I think that's why for many they don't do things out of charity.
Well, there's charity, but then there's also just tact and being human. I intervened recently in a conversation that I saw happening online. Somebody was purporting to be an atheist, and you have to be careful with labels. Just because somebody says they're an atheist doesn't actually mean that they truly are. And you have to kind of ask questions to figure out where they're coming from. Right. And I saw all these people just going after this poor person. And I said, I wanted to tell everybody, all right, everybody, calm down, move away, move over, let me take over, But I couldn't do that. It wasn't kind of a venue for that. But I inserted myself in the conversation and just, first of all, just try to be human with this person. Hi, saw your post, and I'm just curious to know, are you an atheist?
Yeah.
Well, not that it matters, but yeah, I am. And I'm like, okay, well, why wouldn't it matter? And this person had studied with all kinds of, Protestants and some Jewish people and some Muslims, and they just ultimately concluded that God just wasn't for them, And so, but we couldn't even get past that simple point when this person said to me, not that it matters. So I responded to the person, and they have yet to respond.
Oh.
I followed up very quickly. I said, because again, I'm just trying to talk and just find something that we can talk about. So I said to the person, it does matter though, don't you think? Because I don't know who you are. And true, like however you arrived at that, I said that, that's part of your story. I was like, but I said, I don't know who you are outside of this picture and a name on this forum. You're just an avatar name to me, So it does matter on the level of I'm trying to get to know you so we can have a constructive conversation. Well, the person hit the like button, but they never actually responded. So I even wrote back and I said, does that like mean that, is that an answer to the question? They never responded. Yeah. So we couldn't even find that level of commonality that this person wouldn't even admit, it was a she, she couldn't even admit that she was wrong in that initial statement, that it didn't even matter why she was an atheist.
I understand.
I'm like, it does matter because just on the personal level, philosophy aside, on the personal level, I don't know who you are. I'm just trying to get to know you. Yeah. She wouldn't even admit that she made a mistake. That's how prideful. And I just call it for what it is. It's pride.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even admit a simple error like that. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but I wish this person well. I wish no ill will. But it's like I tell the story because this is what we need to learn as Christians. We need to stop reacting. We need to start treating people like people, and engaging them on that level. Just stop with this stuff, folks, And I'm mindful of that. I'm not a saint. I'm trying to be.
We all are.
More than one,
most of us.
Yeah, exactly. I've made more than one mistake in these areas, but I do try to treat people like human beings with respect, and to try to say, well, let's because maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Different people have different ways of speech, and I might not be fully understanding of what you mean by this.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, let's talk. Let's have a constructive conversation. Even with people that disagree with me, it's like, well, it doesn't mean we still can't be friends, or go out and have a beer at a local, restaurant or something, and chew the fat. If we talk about something, we're talking about it. But when it's over, it's over.
Right.
And then you go on and.
I agree.
And even things with private revelation, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I disagree with some things. Some stuff I do believe is authentic. I mentioned Keto earlier. I'm a big believer in Fatima. Huge believer in Fatima. And I've done a lot of studies on that. So I accept these things.
Yeah.
But I will have questions, especially if there's something not right. And
I
if you have
understand.
that developed Catholic sense within you, it comes out immediately. Just as you're hearing something, you're like, something's not right. And even if you can't put your finger on it, if you are always reading and go into the sources, like just today I was reading some stuff from St. Augustine's letters, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. And it applied to something that I'm doing at work. And I notified my supervisor, and I said, I think we need to update this thing that we had, this project. He's like, I agree.
Yeah.
So going back to the sources, you find this stuff, the fathers, Yeah, I've probably gone on way too long talking.
No, it has been very interesting, and I think our listeners will find it very interesting also. But I do have to close. So.
All right, I totally understand.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we were on for an hour and 15 minutes, so it's like, okay, I have to go because the show's only supposed to be an hour. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if you'd like to close us in prayer, and we'll meet again on Thursday.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Do you mind, since we talked about Latin in the tradition, do you mind if I offer the Hail Mary in Latin?
No, that would be beautiful.
All right. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Okay, well, again, Kevin, I've enjoyed this enormously, and I think our listeners will too. And I'll talk to you again on Thursday.
Look forward to it.
Me too. You have a good night now.
You too.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.